would like to thank to all, to the organizers and of course sisters who provide us the possibility to be together. I'm happy that I can see here in this wonderful lecturing room so many young people, which gives me hope for our common future. Of course, I share Dimitri's emotions and impressions about this wonderful place, very meaningful, and place at which we all can learn a lot. I've heard in the last 20 minutes, all those who were speaking before me were talking about resistance, which is the common word which all of us use. Our NGO, Garivo, works on the education about civil courage, and we define the civil courage as a capacity for resistance, disobeying and opposing to the negative authority. There are, according to our experience in Yugoslavia, there are a lot of political tensions which wanted to destroy this country. So we can compare these situations somehow. Today with Bosnia and Herzegovina, in which we still have a lot of negative tensions, which want to continue the war by the other means, by politics today, and to destroy Bosnia. The same people who failed to destroy Bosnia by war try to do that 16 years after the war by political means. So if we now compare the situation in the European Union in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we can talk about those who resist to the common values of the European Union, that they should damage the idea of European Union, of course. And of course we can talk about those, about voters, about citizens, about their responsibility in their societies, to whom they will give their vote, and how those people will represent their ideas. Politicians who agree in general not to agree about them.
Abbiamo dei politici che in generale sono d'accordo tra di loro per non mettersi d'accordo su niente.
And it is a good way for them to target their goal, to destroy the state.
E questo per loro è il modo giusto per arrivare al loro obiettivo, cioè distruggere lo Stato.
But what about the citizens? What about voters? What about 4 million people who live in Bosnia? What is their role in the society? Why are they so quiet? Why they are so calm? Why they do not act?
Perché sono così tranquilli? Perché non reagiscono? Perché non agiscono?
Now I ask about European states of European Union, why the citizens in those countries in which there are a lot of problems do not react, or maybe they react but they fail. So, well, my answer was not very short, but if you're talking about the model of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the model of how to destroy the European Union, it should work, unfortunately. Here is the answer to your next question: is it possible that civil courage become a European Union common value? Yes, I do believe that it is possible, and it is something which we are all working together to reach this goal. Maybe I should briefly explain what NGO Garivo in Sarajevo works. We were established 10 years ago as a branch office of NGO established in Milan in Italy, whose name is Giardino del Giusti in Vento. We had the intention to organize the gardens of the righteous for all those people who resisted to the madness of genocide in the 20th century in the countries which passed through the genocide experience. Bosnia unfortunately passed through such kind of experience at the end of the 20th century, so I accepted this idea and ran this NGO last 10 years. But working on this issue of celebrating the people who resisted, we realized that this is not an issue of only of the past and remembering the past, that we should use those examples, those calmer people, as role models for the present society and for the future generation. Because if we do not remember those people, if we do not write books about them, if we do not make documentary movies about them, then future generations would not have any idea that they have a possibility of choice. Would they behave as a decent human beings, or would they accept to live at any cost? Now we enlarge our activities not only for the war period in Western Balkans, in Croatia, Bosnia and Kosovo, but in the post-war period. So we try to find as much as we can those decent persons who are always ready to resist to the negative authorities, even in the peaceful period. In one sentence, Gariba works to remember and to make the tools, educational tools for the future generations about people who always resist to everything which is negative. So it's another important and hard question. But if I may to simplify, I think I should say that the youth are always a consequence of those who influence their education, means the parents, society, school. So you have had this experience with a particular youth, but I would say that it is a very common situation in very many places, in small places in Serbia as well as in Croatia and part in Bosnia. Youth are under the influence of their parents and their schools, and both do not face what really happened in the recent past. So we have the problem with facing the truth, facing with the past, facing with who committed crimes and who were victims, who were perpetrators, why those bloody wars in former Yugoslavia were waged. And that's why youth are confused and they have no chance to be different. So it's not their fault. The fault belongs to the parents and to the society. We have in Serbia a lot of textbooks of history in which the historical data are completely turned upside down. And we have media in Serbia which are turning upside down the truth about the recent past too. We have politicians who are talking about war criminals as war heroes, and you accept all those things. So we should work on this youth, not only in Serbia but in all those countries of the region, to help them by the appropriate educational programs. It's impossible to be organized through the state schools at the moment because they are under the political influence. But that's why NGOs have a role, as you were involved in one, and you face the consequences of the official education. So your campus, which you organized for those youth last summer, was maybe more important than 8 or 12 years of their schooling in Serbia. And this is your advantage, and all of you who have a capacity and the energy to dedicate your time to those wonderful youth, which is not guilty for anything. They're just victims. And thank you for doing that. This question is very, very often on the table. I should stress that 40 years after the Second World War, in socialistic Yugoslavia, it was the law according to which it was forbidden to express nationalistic feelings. Majority of politicians who organized the wars in the late 80s and waged those wars in the 90s in Yugoslavia were the victims of this law in some period in their lives. Means that majority of them passed through the court and were sentenced to jail because of expressing of their nationalistic feelings and nationalistic ideas. Only Milosevic was exception. If you want, I can list you the names, but I'm not sure that those names will be, except Radovan Karadzic, Ali Izetbegovic, and Franjo Tuđman. Also Šešelj, maybe you are not very common with those names, with other names. Well, means in Yugoslavia it was forbidden to express nationalistic ideas because it was clear that it was the danger for the society. At the beginning of the 90s, with the multi-party system which was established it becomes free to express everything, including nationalism. And then those people who were in some period in prison, they become very important politicians, and they play the card of the nationalistic card, and they manage to provoke and to organize the wars. So it's how it happened and how it is possible. So now we can discuss about, was it enough democratic way to have a law on which you will forbid something, but at the same time in every country some things are forbidden. And if we talk about the lack of hope for the future, I would say that we do have a future in Western Balkan, but at the moment when our citizens become enough responsible about their own lives and about society, so we are trying to produce the critical mass of responsible individuals in each of those Western Balkan societies. Then we will have a future. Well, again, thank you for your work in our country. It's extraordinarily important. Something which I always stress about generalization is that, again, the example of goodness, the example in which somebody crossed interethnic or interfaith barrier to help to somebody who was unfairly persecuted, is always the best way to overcome generalizations. Because it's always clear that it is on the individual level, everything. Evil was done on the individual level, and good deeds happened on the individual level. So if we have an example that somebody from one ethnic group protected somebody who belongs to another ethnic group against his own members of ethnic group who persecuted those people, then we have a situation that audience who would read a testimony about that or would see a documentary movie about this event would say, well, so the evil happened. Some members of our society or our ethnic group were perpetrators. But there is example that we were not all the same. We were not all perpetrators. We were not all criminals. Because we have somebody whom we can see or read about who behaved as a decent human being. So that's why we use this way as an educational way, you know, for the present generations and for the future generations, how to overcome generalization about evil. Because there is no evil nation. It's just about individuals, no matter how many of them existed at some, in some period, at some place or some country. We have thousands of experience with the people, how they change their way of thinking after being faced with such kind of examples. For example, in Goraz, the place which is on the border between Serbia and Bosnia. In Bosnia, I was approached by a young man who told me, Dr. Broz, one copy of your book came 6 months ago. It was 6 months after the book has been first time published. One copy of the book came to Gorazde, and it was going from hand to hand, from one house to another house, and the whole Gorazde read within 6 months your book. Before those 6 months, I was a witness that people in Gorazde had no idea that their pre-war neighbors should be back. After reading your book, it is always, wherever I am in the city, a discussion about why shouldn't our pre-war neighbors will be back if they did not commit the atrocities.